so thanks very much. Well, obviously, first of all, to John for this event. I think it's occurred to everybody by now what a unique experience this is for everybody in the middle of all this chaos and this incredible. There's a lot of fear. All of us have a lot of fear what's happening, what the future brings. And to have this little window of opportunity for us to get together, to renew our alliances, to go to Mass, and to kind of fuel up and gear up for what's coming and John, I never thought we'd be back, but I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And like, for example, that it's such an important part of what happens here. For example, last night, it brings tears to my eyes. I don't know if I'm getting old or what, but looking at those performers, it just brings tears to my eyes. That's the old world. That's old Christendom. That's the old normal. That freaks like Klaus Schwab have every desire in the world to obliterate not only that, but what that represents. Family, beautiful music, culture, that which uplifts and brings us closer to God. He's never asked us if we want to have these horrible things happen to us, if we want to be transformed, transhuman. It's not up to us. I'm sorry, but he's a psycho. And Father Monkholt and others are talking about what's coming in terms of, if you haven't read his stuff, you really must read it. Because I think part of the reason that they're stumbling right now is because the man's a lunatic. And there are things that, I remember watching one thing where they were talking about this idea of robots taking over. And this might be something on the human level that will help to further undermine what they're trying to do. Just let's see what you think. They want to have robots. Well, what kind of robot? What's a robot going to do? An AI robotic assistant in your house. The answer, it's going to be, if you have a grandmother in your house who wants a cup of tea every afternoon, you can send your robot to give her the cup of tea. And I thought to myself, this is maybe the most obscene thing I've ever even heard them say, that they would overlook the fact that grandma doesn't want tea, grandma wants human touch. Yeah. Grandma wants her children and grandchildren to bring the tea is an excuse for her. And this is what these people don't understand. And I'm hoping maybe the fact that they're trying to cut humanity out of it. I mean, how many of you go to a bar merely to get a glass of beer distributed from a machine and there's no human contact? If you start thinking about what happens when we go AI and robotic, it's really, really an ugly world. And I think that's the kind of thing that we can talk about in terms of defeating this thing. It still is possible. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you it's the apocalypse and it's the end of the world. We got a fight on our hands. And I'll conclude with that. But I believe with all my heart, given that we have the stories, that we have the faith, that we have God on our side as long as we stay on his side, these guys don't have a chance. But we need to get out there and speak and tell people what's really going on. Just a practical thing. You like to drive your car? I love driving cars. It's one of the things that was hardest for my father when he got old and got a little confused, was my mother took his car keys. It was one of the most difficult things for him. He loved driving a car. Runs in the family. I love driving cars. Well, they just presume that nobody wants to drive cars in the future. And so they're not only going to give you autonomous electric cars, they're going to take those away too. And this is not conspiracy theory. This is exactly what they say. What they envision: smart cities with a global fleet of smart Ubers, self-driven. And the problem is, you will not be a good enough driver in the future to continue to drive your own electric car. You see what I'm saying? Because cars and people and intersections are missing by just a fraction of a centimeter, because it's all controlled by computer. It's all in satellite. It's all smart cities, smart cars. So this is the idea what they have, for example, with that pleasure in life. If you like to drive cars, they're taking it all away. And there's no by your leave. They want to, you've all heard Bill Gates wants to get rid of beef. You won't have any beef. And right now we're seeing in Holland, we're seeing, I think in Italy, where they're talking about slaughtering herds, half the cows in a given country, so they can meet the Agenda 2030. This is crazy stuff. It really is. And yet that's what we're up against. And I only bring it up, and it's already happening. Yeah, the farmers are in rebellion. But I bring it up because I think this is the kind of thing that once people realize what they really have in mind, it's going to get easier for us to and that's to say nothing of the philosophic problems that Father talked about yesterday. I mean, really, this Klaus Schwab and his team believe that history began when man invented God, he says. And history will end when man becomes God, through digital, through science, through technology. They actually believe this. That's what they want to do, and that's what they're saying, very open about it. So we've learned a lot this week about the Great Reset. And I don't want to concentrate on that because it's been done really well by a bunch of several really excellent talks. I just want to ask a really simple question that I think will help us put our movement, the reason we're here, the reason we continue to fight, the reason we get up in the morning, continue to pray and have hope and optimism. What is Francis doing really? Why is he supporting this revolution? Why is he supporting the revolution in Davos? Now, in Notre Charge Apostolique, St. Pius X says something kind of sad. You probably know what I'm going to say here, John. He says the church has, quote, never betrayed the happiness of the people by consenting to compromising alliances. Isn't that sad? It's almost like Pius X couldn't even imagine what's happened with the Vatican very much contributing now and consenting to dangerous alliances, putting Mother Church in a position of compromise with evil. And of course, there's a lot of examples of that. You've seen some of this. Let's play a little bit of it. This is Cardinal Peter Turkson.
As the World Economic Forum celebrates its 50th anniversary, I send greetings and prayerful good wishes to all taking part in this year's gathering. I thank you for your invitation to participate and have asked Cardinal Peter Turkson, Prefect of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development.
Now the reason I think that's interesting is because does he not realize what Davos is standing for, what they're talking about? Is he unaware of it? Well, of course he's aware of it, and yet he sends Cardinal Peter Turkson every year. Cardinal Turkson went the year after this, and you know what he actually said? He said in a press conference, as a stakeholder, I have a question to ask about such and so. Cardinal Turkson considers himself one of Klaus Schwab's stakeholders. Stakeholder. That's how this whole thing is going to work. And this is a stakeholder in a revolution that's at war with God, it's at war with the soul, and as you'll see in a second, you've seen this one before, but really let this one sink in. Francis is sending his main guys to support a movement, a revolution that is saying things like this.
If you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible. And in such a situation, the old democratic system stopped functioning. We need to reinvent democracy for this new era in which humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. We need to come to terms with the fact that, this is where philosophy meets computer science and biology.
And that's relatively mild. We're kind of used to that one coming from these clowns. I mean, he's the one in the previous video said, under the skin surveillance could be the greatest thing that comes out of the COVID pandemic. Under the skin surveillance, he wants to do this. So again, why is Francis supporting this? I'm going to try to answer that. This is the future that Davos has in mind. This is what Build Back Better is all about. Global surveillance state where God is replaced by science and your thoughts are not even your own. And it seems like I don't think this is a new revolution. I think it goes back to the garden. It goes back to Mother Eve, of course. It's like the Enlightenment on steroids. It's the same philosophical principle, only now they have the technology to implement some very, very dangerous and satanic agenda and plans. So I hope to show this in a moment that this revolution that we're looking at here is actually the very same revolution that has taken the Catholic Church. I would argue that the Great Reset, the first Great Reset, was the one that took place in the Church. This could never have happened had it not been for the Church. The fall of the Church and her human element. Everybody here I know understands when I say the Church has fallen, we're not talking about the divine element of the Church. We're talking about the human element of the Church. You always have to keep that in mind. The divine element is pristine, is flawless, can never be harmed, can never harm us. But that the human element now has done this, and that it started at the modernist coming out party at Vatican II, I think we can prove. I think everybody in this room pretty much already knows it, but I want to show you some kind of interesting, tangible proof so that we can arm ourselves for further warfare. Pope Paul VI, when he closed the Second Vatican Council, actually is using the sentiments and the ideas, even a little bit of the buzzwords of what we're now hearing all the time, equity and inclusion and all of that sort of thing. Here's Paul VI. I'll just play a little bit.
Questo centro cattolico romano nessuno è in via di principio irraggiungibile. In linea di principio tutti possono e debbono essere raggiunti. Per la Chiesa cattolica nessuno è
For the
estraneo,
Catholic Church, no one is a stranger,
nessuno è escluso,
no one is excluded,
nessuno è lontano.
and no one is far away from us. It's the beginning of that whole idea of the church of accompaniment, obviously, and it's very similar to the language that Klaus Schwab talks about to justify all of this. We are going to have an inclusive society, a society of equity, a society where there are no people on the peripheries. This is the language also, obviously, of Francis. And so I would argue that as I say, the first great reset was of the Catholic Church. The first statues that were toppled were not of the founding fathers of the United States. The first statues that were toppled were statues of Our Lady, of our Lord, of the saints in Catholic sanctuaries after the close of the Second Vatican Council. I would say inclusion 60 years ago, the word inclusion, meant that the Catholic Church absolutely has to renege on her claim to be the one true church founded by Jesus Christ, outside of which there is no salvation. This is this is not inclusive, this is exclusive in a good sense. And so the church, that's what inclusion meant. Modernists, we have to make this open to everyone, as Francis says every day. It was in the name of equity, the modernist great resetters tore down the high altars, tore out the communion rails, brought women guitars and everything else in and sat the priest down in the name of equity. Traditional Catholics have been fighting, in other words, the Great Reset for all of our lives. For 50 years. If you want to go back to Pius X, for 100 years. We know what we're doing. We're good at understanding what this revolution is. And all we have to do is come to understand that the fight of our fathers in defense of Mother Church is exactly the same fight that we're all going through today with respect to this diabolical New World Order which seeks to crush the kingdom of Christ forever. The revolution reset the Catholic Church again in her human element, which is why today, one of the speeches earlier, one of the lectures was that the church never did what the revolution was never able to tell the church what to do. What we saw in stark detail, in horrific detail, that has now completely changed, and that the revolution is telling the Pope, the Vicar of Christ, exactly what to do. This is how COVID, you'll remember, got off the ground. I do not believe we would have been locked down for 2 years and masked up and taking shots had this not happened. The moral authority of the Catholic Church was on board. You understand that the power of that symbolism. The whole world looked at that, the lone Pope who was trying to save us all from the pandemic. And we know what a lie that was. I'm sorry, I don't want to judge the Holy Father, but I can't believe he actually was believing that. I think he was playing a role, truly dramatic role, with music and everything coming out of the Vatican production of that. This is the Pope, humbly carrying out the orders of the globes. I should say, I don't want to say anything here today to scandalize anybody. That's not the point. If someone can tell me what we're supposed to do with Francis, how we're supposed to, as faithful Catholics, if there's some other way other than resisting him to his face, as Paul resisted Peter, I'm wide open to hear it. But I think the day of pulling the punches and pulling back and worrying about schism, I think that's over. We don't have enough time for that. Francis is literally holding the coats in this video of those who locked down the world, masked up the world, preparing for the diabolical Great Reset that we're discussing here, and that may still be coming. They certainly think it is. And the question is, as this photograph here, you've all seen this, we've seen the videos, where's the apology for this? Where's the apology from the bishops and from the priests for this? Do we even have any concept of how many old people who spent their whole lives in the Catholic Church ended it like this, with no priest being allowed to come in? With no last rites, with no confession, looking at their loved ones through a window? Where's the apology? I did a show on this, on the elderly, and I got a call from an old woman. She's like, you don't know me, I just saw your show. I have not been to Mass in 6 months. Is there any way you can come and pick me up and take me to Mass? And so I did, this poor old woman who just wanted to go to Mass, and she wasn't allowed to. So we took her to the Latin Mass. But I would love to know if anybody's ever even going to think about possibly apologizing for that. And so why is Francis, and I mean this sincerely, why are his eyes so closed to what this is actually all about? What's going on? And the only thing that I can come up with is that this is his job. This is why he came in. This is why they got rid of Benedict. Because the New World Order simply cannot survive. It can't be established unless the old world order of Christendom has been buried. You know this. But Francis seems to all but be admitting that almost every day. The spirit of Vatican II has spent 6 decades destroying the old order of Christendom. It literally has. I don't know if that's upsetting to say that Vatican II did that. Well, it did. The event, I'm not even talking about the 16 documents of Vatican II. The event, the spirit, even Benedict admitted that. Back in 2013, one of his last speeches to the Roman Empire, he said, the spirit of the council of the media, destroyed the liturgy, emptied the seminaries, but he was saying we got to go back to the authentic council. But even he admits it was a disaster, the thing that we had to live through, destroying the Holy Mother Church, causing millions of people to leave the church, hundreds of thousands of priests to leave, almost eradicating their religious life. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This can be demonstrated in a number of ways. And I would like to take a stab at something you might not have heard of before tonight. I want to talk about this thing called the Catacombs Pact. Has everybody heard of this thing? Yeah. I hope so. Sometimes it's called Pact of the Catacombs. Sometimes it's the Catacombs Pact. It's the same thing. I think it's the Rosetta Stone for us as traditional Catholics. It really is, if you pay attention to it. I'm going to warn you, it seems at first like it's something Alex Jones came up with, or maybe it's in a Malachi Martin book. But I'm going to dispel that. You're going to see that this is as authentic as it can possibly be.
92-year-old Father Luigi Battazzi is the last known survivor of a secret pact that experts say may have influenced Pope Francis. Signed 50 years ago at the time of Vatican II by Catholic bishops in this underground church in Rome. Called the Pact of the Catacombs, it vowed to create a poor church for the poor, the same church Pope Francis says he wants today.
Yes, we have to go back on November 16th, 1965, and that evening, around 40 Father Council
Fathers.
Council Father, gathered in Catacomb of Domitilla.
Okay, it's important to note that it wasn't just 40, because within a few weeks of the actual signing of the Catacombs Pact, 500 bishops signed on to this. And this is when Vatican II was still going on. So if you've ever wondered, for example, why Francis just wants to be called Francesco, and why he's the man of the people, I think we can see some answers here.
And they decide, for example, to refuse, for example, to be called Eminency, Monsignor. So they wanted to be called like Father.
So we've seen a lot of that. And you ask, again, why did he wear the black work shoes? Why did he wear a plain watch with a thick black band for his first papal mass? Why is he running around in this thing, which is just so ridiculous? This little Fiat 500L, cramming himself in and claiming that somehow shows humility. No, it doesn't. It's degrading the office of the papacy. He's a successor of St. Peter. He's the vicar of Christ on earth. He should be transported in an honorable way that befits the office. It's all part, as we'll see here, of the Catacomb Pact.
And we can say, for example, that they decide to refuse all the insignia.
Okay.
And when I say insignia, it means
like
the
cross, the rings.
Yeah.
So again, the Catacombs Pact to me is a Rosetta Stone for understanding a lot of things that happened at the Vatican, during Vatican II and afterwards. But perhaps the most dramatic, it's already been mentioned a couple times this week, but I think we should just take a quick look. The most dramatic sort of symbol of the implementation of the ideas of the Catacombs Pact comes here. There's a little bit of a delay on this, the beginning of this. You've seen this, but I think it's very important to see how it was put into motion.
Poi un altro segno dei tempi. Il 13 ottobre 1964 Montini fa dono ai poveri della tiara. La consegna a Spillman, arcivescovo di New York, che la espone nelle varie diocesi.
Extremely dramatic moment. You know, for 1,000 years, in 1143 to 1964, the tiara, the symbol of the Pope, is basically as monarch, you know, as king, being dramatically, before the Second Vatican Council even concluded, being dramatically set aside. This was the sign that a massive revolution, a resetting of the Catholic Church was at hand. Pope Paul VI uncrowning himself, and you know why. Anybody guess why? I'm sure you know why Paul VI had to uncrown himself? For the poor. It was for the poor, once again. He says he was moved, quote, moved to make the gesture by discussions of world poverty during the meetings at the Second Vatican Council. And I really, really wish we cannot accept this lie that the Catholic Church only found out about taking care of the poor people at the time of the Second Vatican Council. The Catholic Church, huh? Exactly right. Look, here's a fun thing.
The poor church has never been the church of the poor.
Right. Go look up the history of hospitals. Did you know your church, the Catholic Church, invented the hospital system? The orphanage system? And even into modern times, look at the Mother Teresa, whatever you think of Mother Teresa. But she was doing some things for the poor folks, it seems. The Catholic Church is pretty good at that, going into the slums and taking care of the poor. So Francis, again, this whole idea that finally we're going to take care of the poor is a lie, and you as Catholics should refute it and denounce it anytime you hear it. It's literally fake news, fake history that they're doing. And by the way, Pope John Paul I, who I guess is going to be canonized now or beatified soon, he's the one that replaced the coronation ceremony with a mass of inauguration for the Pope. So I think that's an interesting, you can see the progression. By the time they got to Pope Francis, he didn't even bother wearing the regalia, the symbol of his office, on the loggia. John and I were there. He was up there looking like he was in a t-shirt that night. It was just, it was startling. Buonasera. I thought John was going to have a stroke. Like, oh no, South American Jesuit. Oh no, we're dead. And you were right. But yeah, all of this was for the poor, which is again is a lie. He made so he made this clear right after his Pope Francis. I know you were. I think Ed was there. I was there when he had his first Pope Francis, when he had his meeting with the media in the Paul VI audience hall for the first time. I didn't realize it then because I wasn't that familiar with the Catacombs Pact, but he was really announcing that this was going to be his pontificate.
Come vorrei una chiesa povera e per I poveri.
It was all about that. He is going to start now the Church of the Poor. You know, he was advised to do so by Cardinal Humes, who just recently passed away, and he mentions Cardinal Humes in this talk, that this, moving forward, we are going to have a poor church. This is also in the Catacombs Pact. He's actually initiating the pact, and the question comes up again, why? What's really behind all this? And let's let the last remaining signer, the last surviving signer of the Catacombs Pact, tell us exactly why Francis is implementing the Catacombs Pact. He's still alive, 98 years old.
I always say that Pope Francis is the new Catacombs Pact.
Is it? Actually is. In paragraph 10, to give you, there's not enough time to go into all the details of the pact. I would encourage you to read it. But I'm going to read paragraph 10 of the Catacombs Pact. I'm curious if you see any similarities to what we hear from Schwab and company right now. It's paragraph 10. You can read along with me if you want. We will do our best so that those responsible for our government and for our public services make and put into practice laws, structures, and social institutions required by justice and charity, equality, and the harmonic and holistic development of all men and women, and by this means bring about the advent of a new social order, worthy of the sons and daughters of mankind and of God. They're making a declaration here. Again, this is not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy, literally breathing as one beneath the streets of Rome, Second Vatican Council, making plans like this, creating a new social order. This is the agenda of Francis. We've seen it, but at the time, even secular people, media people saw it.
They also vowed to put pressure on international organizations to help change the economic structures which they said exploit the poor. These are all points that are remarkably similar to Pope Francis's agenda for the Church today.
And in case you think this is just traditional Catholic rad-trad ranting, the Neo-Catholics are very much on board with the whole idea that Francis and the Catacomb Pact are inseparable. Even the prominent Neo-Catholic defenders of Francis, here is Massimo Fagioli in the Washington Post, And he says, with Pope Francis, you cannot ignore the Catacombs Pact. It is key to understanding him, so it is no mystery that it has come back to us today. But wait, there's more. There's more. Let's go now to the Amazon Synod. At the Amazon Synod of 2019, Bishop Erwin Kreutler, who helped, do you remember his role at the Synod? I can't remember the name of his function, but he was a very high-ranking Kreutler at the Synod, I think, right?
Yes.
I know he helped develop the Instrumentum Laboris, whatever that position. Anyway, I just want to make the point.
He's a member of the preparation.
Of the preparations. He's a big deal, this guy. He's not some low-level guy. So as Kreutler, he helped develop the Instrumentum Laboris. He decided that the Amazon Synod was a perfect time for him to lead an expedition down into the catacombs to celebrate the anniversary of the Catacombs Pact. I was in Rome at the time, and here was the reaction.
So now, in just a few hours, tomorrow morning, this guy, in favor of women priests, he will head up a group of Synod fathers at the commemoration mass at sunrise in Rome, down in the catacomb, the exact spot where the original Catacomb Pact took place some 54 years ago.
I realize, again, it sounds like Malachi Martin. It's all true. It's easy to verify. And who is this Bishop Erwin Kreutler? Well, at the Amazon Synod, I happened to film an intrepid Vatican journalist who found out exactly what the good Bishop Kreutler stands for. You might recognize this guy.
Is the ordination of women deacons part of a push to ordain women priests in the church?
I guess many of the bishops are in favor. Women now are able to be ordained. Why?
So you support women? You would like to see women ordained priests?
Logically.
Didn't they pull him away after that?
Yeah, they literally, I was over the head and they came and grabbed him and pulled him away from him.
It's the guy who bragged about not baptizing his Sindhu.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, same guy.
Oh, yeah, that's something else.
That's him. And this is the guy who needed to go down and renew the Catacombs Pact during the Amazon Synod, because, as we'll find out in a moment, the architect of the Catacombs Pact himself was very much in favor of women priests. And I suspect that so is Francis. He's just having trouble getting that job done. Hopefully he won't be prevented from getting that job done. But the Amazon Synod was not the first anniversary, by the way, of the Catacombs Pact that took place under the pontificate of Pope Francis. 2016 is a day-long seminar celebrating the anniversary, and this time we had Walter Cardinal Casper, who announced that Pope Francis's program is to a high degree what the Catacombs Pact is all about. I needed to go over some of this so you can really understand how serious this is, how far up it goes, so I can make the next point, which is, I think, very important for where we stand today. What does all this have to do with Davos? What does this have to do with the World Economic Forum? What does that have to do with Klaus Schwab? So to answer that, we have to understand something about the principal council father now who was responsible for the Catacombs Pact. His name is Don Elder Camara. Okay, so, yeah. He is, I'll give you a little bit of him. He was born in 1909 and he died 90 years later.
Temos uma injustiça milenar contra o nosso espírito. Né? Temos o corpo na cama e o espírito que se arrume. Né? Quando há repousos especificamente espirituais.
So that's. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong slide. Okay. I just thought there was a remarkable resemblance here. He attended all 4 sessions. Okay, so now we have to take a few moments to understand who this guy was, to understand the point I'm trying to make. Very significant guy. He attended all 4 sessions of Vatican II. He's a council father, and according to he's responsible for the authorship, for drafting Gaudium et Spes, arguably the most controversial and dangerous document of the 16th, which, according to Monsignor Gherardini, professor of ecclesiology at the Pontifical Lateran University, Gaudium et Spes, who this man helped draft, Gaudium et Spes makes the church one speaker among many others and robs her of the nature of Sacramentum Christi and her subsequent responsibility concerning eternal salvation. So again, we see the philosophy of changing the church forever, and Francis trying to implement this, basing what he does on the Catacombs Pact. Guess what? Dom Helder Camara and his socialist buddies vowed, you may have seen this a few moments ago, but now it might mean more to you. They vowed down there under the streets of Rome to pressure international organizations, get this is Vatican II, their purview is the spiritual thing, pastoral council, but they went down there to vow to pressure international organizations to reset the economy of the world. Wow. It's in the pact. Listen to the first part of this.
They also vowed to put pressure on international organizations to help change the economic structures which they said exploit the poor. These are all points that are remarkably similar to Pope Francis's agenda for the Church today.
Remarkably similar also to the agenda laid out by one Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. By the way, Pope Francis in 2015 made this self-identified socialist Archbishop from Brazil a servant of God.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're kidding.
No. And his cause is up. He'll probably be out of there. He was even accused of having Nazi sympathies. He's a really, really controversial guy.
Yes, he's had his whole history because Brazil's history is extraordinary in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
He was himself in favor of what would have seemed to us to begin with, would have seemed to us to be the idea of a Catholic state under Brazil. And then he flipped around in the 50s because of all sorts of, Sumans was his great hero.
Right, so he
was ordained wearing the fascist integrist uniform under his cassock.
At least it wasn't Catholic regalia, right?
Yeah.
He also pushed for remarriage after divorce. And he was very critical of Paul VI for not including contraception in the documents of Vatican II. He says of that, in fact, he says, the Church's prohibition of contraception, says this guy, is, quote, a mistake meant to torture spouses and to disturb peace in many homes. Adamantly pro-contraception. So now, if you start piecing it all together, what Francis said about rabbits, and let's not be preoccupied with contraception, and he has one Jeffrey Sachs, a population controlling guru, come and become, what is his position now? Is that the Pontifical Academy or something, I think? It's a member.
In the last year, get appointed a member.
Officially a member. And here's what this guy's all about.
So the world is getting very crowded, and the big problem is that in the poorest countries, families are still having 6, 7, or 8 children. That's what's putting this tremendous growth in population. Well, I think the main thing is that when women in poor countries have better choice, they're better informed, they have education, they choose to have fewer children. They choose to adopt family planning or contraception.
Yeah, so that's Jeff Sachs. He's obviously, I'm sure you all know this, he's the drafter of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, Agenda 2030, very close to the Vatican at this point. And it's, again, they're all on the same page, going back, once again, to the ideas that we see in the Catacombs Pact. And now, as Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. So this is where I thought, I was just stunned when I found this, quite by accident. Here is the rest of the story, considering everything we've just talked about. This rest of the story comes from one Klaus Schwab.
I give you one example which for me was probably a crucial moment in my life. I traveled for the first time to Brazil. I met a priest who was known at that time as the priest of the poor people. His name was Don Helder Camara. And he brought me to the favelas of Recife, and I was so shocked. And I said, I have to invite this bishop to Davos to tell the people what poverty is. So I invited him to the annual meeting in Davos. But then when I came back in Switzerland, I found out that actually he was forbidden at that time to speak in Switzerland because he was considered to be a communist. And I said, this is for me a test. But then I noticed that many companies told me, if you invite this person who is so much against business, we will not come to Davos anymore. And that's where I had to stand to my values. Even at the risk that I would have to give up the World Economic Forum.
Wow.
But it went very well. I have to say, the audience in Davos listened to him.
Think of that for a moment. Klaus Schwab was going to give up the entire World Economic Forum in order to have a council father at Vatican II speak at Davos.
Because he was uglier than he is.
That's saying something. And you wonder why Pope Francis is now, I mean, really, he's going after the Latin Mass. I've talked to so many non-Catholics and just folks, online and elsewhere. What do you think of this? It's just nobody gets it. What in the world, in the middle of this supposed pandemic and all of these problems, this man is feverishly trying to crush the Latin Mass. Well, I think it should be pretty obvious. The Latin Mass movement represents the return of everything that these guys have been working all of their careers, 50, 100 years to destroy. And I hope it's not overstating our own importance, people in this room, all of us in this room, all of us all around the country, the clans all around the country, all around the world. I hope it's not overstating it to say, when you start realizing the geopolitical role of the traditional Catholic counter-revolution, it should fire us up. We are the last significant, I think, body of resistance to what's happening. And if you'll remember, during COVID, who was it? What group was reliably fighting against the lockdown? What group was wearing all kinds of crazy masks with messages, telling the world exactly what we thought of the pandemic? What group has distinguished itself by refusing to close the churches, by refusing to let them shut down the Mass? It was the traditional Catholics. You think that wasn't noticed? Of course it was noticed. Which is why Francis now is trying to shut us down, because they understood the power. They had to go under the streets of Rome and plot the destruction of the Mass and everything that we're defending at this Roman Forum this week, because they have no answer for this. This was the original parking lot priest who literally said no.
And there is no weather, and there is no force or principality in heaven and on earth that can stop us from offering the sacrifice of the Mass.
That video went viral, and it would be hard for me to overemphasize the impact that it had. The political impact in the church, and the ecclesiastical political impact, was that the bishops, the archbishops and bishops of Minnesota Archdiocese, they call them Minneapolis, this was going everywhere. And in a couple of weeks after this video was posted, Archbishop Bernard Hebda of our Archdiocese said to the governor of Minnesota, "We're opening the churches." And he did. He actually defied the government. That would be the political impact. The personal impact of our children. I have a 10-year-old son, a 9-year-old son, having to go to Mass in the car, stay in the car, and we could hear through the radio signal, was incredibly impactful for my son. To see Father out there just like defying this evil move to shut down the Mass. So God writes straight with crooked lines. There's many, many powerful lessons. And traditional Catholicism, I would say, since we were shut down, has been off to the races. It's been doing the Chartres pilgrimage this year, 20,000 young people marching from Paris to Chartres. On the backs of their shirts, they had official T-shirts. You know what it said? Guardians of Tradition. 20,000 T-shirts, Guardians of Tradition. So I'm going to close here in a moment, but I want to reiterate that idea. We know what it is. We have to fight it as crusaders, as serious Catholics, not being so worried about schism anymore, because they're the ones creating the schism. We're not leaving the church. We're the ones that are staying and defending our mother. She's our mother. They're the ones that are trying to run us out. They're going to leave long before we do. And when you understand that we are not talking about liturgical preferences or this or that little theological point, but you're actually talking about geopolitics. They're using the Catholic Church now, the bride of Christ, to enshrine this demonic revolution of theirs. We as men and women, as serious Catholics, need to fight. I mean, really, really fight back hard. And I think to do that, which is why I'm glad John allowed me to choose this topic, we have to understand our role. We have to understand our role again. We have to understand that the only counter-revolutionary movement that matters in the world today is ours, friends. Every one of you, you're here in this room tonight, every apostolate that you represent, you're the clans, we're the clans. We are the ones. We're the ones that have to make sure this revolution fails. And God is good, because the main thing we have to do is keep the faith. Never question the faith. Tell the stories of the old faith. Teach our children the old faith. And we win, because theirs is a culture of death and ours is a culture of life. But we have to understand the necessity. None of us have ever been in a time like this. My father would never have spoken against Francis like I feel like I have to now. He's the Pope. But we don't have an alternative, because it's so bad. Why is it so important to connect these political dots to this geopolitical enterprise that is so very evil? And I think Francis, again, understands the importance of this movement. That's why he's trying to shut it down. That's why he's concerned about what Archbishop Vigano calls the children of light. We are the children of light as long as we earn the right to stand in their company. We are the children of light. We will make the difference. We will outlive this revolution. And there are more of us, I'm finding out all the time, so many more of us than we thought, friends. So many more. Remnant TV did a Davos video back in 2021. I was tipped off about Davos by 3 people who were in this room. 2 journalists, I'm not going to embarrass them, and name them, and a YouTuber from London who's also in this room. I got the tip, and I ran with the video. Do you know how many views that has garnered? Within a few weeks, 25 million views. That's a tremendous amount. What's that?
That happened
during the lockdown. Why do I bring this up? Because people are ready for this message. They've now seen the beast. They understand what's coming. They've seen the lockdown. They've seen the horrors that are planned for us in the future. They're ready. They're right and ready for the message of the proclamation of the kingship of Christ. And I think we have to do this as best we possibly can. Of course, that's the whole point and purpose of this conference. Because the global elites, as you all know, are dedicated to the end of life as we know it, to the end of the traditional Catholic family, to the traditional family based on the Trinity, the end of human beings functioning as merely human. Klaus Schwab talks about the fact that once we get interface with the cell phone and the technology in our brains, then we are going to evolve to the next stage. And he very kindly says, you won't have to have these computer elements, digital elements in place implanted in your brain, but if you don't, you will be like the unevolved monkeys on the evolutionary scale. And so you'll be left behind. This is as serious as God is. And of course, as we see in various videos, they actually say that God himself does not exist. God was an invention. This is the enemy that we face. And the Church of Accompaniment is the same way. It's animated by the spirit of Vatican II, and it is dedicated to a spiritual culture of death. And we know this to be true. Whereas the entire traditional Catholic counter-revolution is dedicated to a temporal and spiritual culture of life. That's what we have. We win in the end because God wins in the end. So it's time to call this crusade. We're not here to hide from the enemy. We're here to declare war on him. And I want to leave that thought with you. Let's have the confidence that crusaders had when they went up against the enemies of Christ in their day. Let's build that confidence. Why do we think these lunatics of Davos can't be beat? We have the Eucharist, we have God, we have each other, we have the truth that built Western civilization. We need to inspire our young people to understand we're going to win this. We are going to win this. We will challenge them, we will take them down, because God will take them down. We stand with God, they go down. And the other reason to do it, of course, is because not all bishops have lost the faith, friends. And you know this. The bishops, some of the bishops are starting to wake up. Have you noticed? It's amazing. All of a sudden you have Vigano and Schneider and Cardinal Burke and all these people. Now they've been shackled with the shackles of collegiality ever since the council. You can't expect them all to be Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. We need to be patient with them. But what they need to see is that we will have their backs and we will defend them, that we will become the best defenders they have when they stand up and speak the truth. They're human too. So rather than just dismissing all the bishops, Let's find out which ones we can recruit. Let's let them know we're going to stand with them. And I'll give you a close with a really inspiring little thing that happened 2 days ago. I did a video last week in which, in a moment of intemperance, I called His Holiness a diabolically disoriented clown. I'm not saying I'm proud of that, I just did in this video. So a pretty controversial video. And the whole thing was about Nancy Pelosi getting invited to the Vatican and receiving Holy Communion 5 days after Roe was overturned. Guess who retweeted that video? Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas. That took incredible courage, and I want to just look at what he says here. He ends this, he says, a sad commentary on the church and the state in our times, talking about a Remnant TV video. We need to wake up and stand for truth. Jesus Christ is the face of truth. Again, to this I say, Viva Cristo Rey. You see, we have the power because we have the truth to inspire them to do what they need to do. And that's what we need to do instead of just condemning them and ruling them out as modern as compromisers are going to know. We have hope. We have the hope. We have the Archbishop Vigano. Whoever thought that was going to come? Yet it did. So we need to remind ourselves of these supernatural graces that God gives us, these reminders that the faith will survive forever, and that it's our job to attach ourselves to it, to defend it every single day, to go out into the street and defend it, and to encourage more and more people to join in this fight for the proclamation of the kingship of Christ, which you're all doing here at the Roman Forum this week. For me, it's an honor to stand with you, and I just thank you for listening, and I hope this crusade can be called and that we can realize that in the end, God wins. And that's the main thing. I don't care what Klaus Schwab says. I don't care what these people say. God wins in the end. So thank you very much for listening.